It's the 4th day of Grotmas, so let's open up a fresh new Thousand Suns detachment that wants to get into the flow by securing parts of the battlefield for extra bonuses on their psychers. Welcome to the Grotmas Detachment Show, where each and every day from December 1st to the 24th, Games Workshop releases a new detachment for every army in Warhammer 40k. It's an exciting time and there's a lot to talk about, so let's break it down for you and give you an easy to understand first look at these detachments. Happy Grotmas, everybody! Welcome to the Hex Warp Thrall Band. This is exciting because it's the first detachment for the Thousand Suns beyond their initial Index one. With that, let's get into it, taking a look at their detachment rule, which is Flow of Magic. This is going to work very similar to the Chaos Demon's Shadow in the Warp and the Necron's Canoptic Court abilities. What this means is, of course, there are 3 areas on the battlefield: your deployment zone, no man's land, and your opponent's deployment zone. And there's ways in which each of the zones is considered to be within your army's flow of magic. Your deployment zone is always considered to be within your army's flow of magic, which is nice. And then for both no man's land and the enemy's deployment zone, at the start of any phase, if you control at least half of the objective markers within that area, it will then be considered to be within your army's flow of magic until the end of that phase. What this means is you'll get a couple bonuses as long as your units are wholly within your flow of magic. First off, you're always going to be allowed to reroll your wound rolls of 1 for psychic attacks, but if you are wholly within your army's flow of magic, instead those psychic attacks get +1 to wound. This is a very interesting ability. Of course, Thousand Suns do lack some of the Chaos Demons and Necron's ability to easily flip objectives, but it is an ability that is going to be largely within your control. And the fact that you can sit in your deployment zone in the early game and still get the benefits is kind of nice. We are going to be giving up some significant rules in the sense that really you're giving up sustained on your psychic attacks or devastating on your psychic attacks, as those are the 2 most commonly picked abilities. This does help your damage output in some ways, but not in others. For example, Rubric Marines make the mainstay of most Thousand Suns armies, and they are always going to be allowing their unit to reroll wound rolls of 1 regardless. +1 to wound is good, but you are already going to have access to that within Armon, as well as anyone within 6 inches of Magnus with their psychic attacks. So honestly, not entirely sure if it's worth it, but in a vacuum, it is a very powerful ability. Moving along to the enhancements, we've got 4 of them today. Let's take a look at them, starting off with Arcane Might. This is a 20-point enhancement, granting +1 strength to psychic weapons in the bearer's unit, and +2 when you're within the flow. Now, this does affect all psychic weapons within the unit, so this could influence the sorcerer as well as the inspiring sorcerer, but it really is hard to compete with the one in the original detachment, which gives you not only strength, but also more importantly, damage. Next up, we have Empowered Manifestation, another 20-point enhancement. For this enhancement, when you're in the flow, you get +6-inch range for psychic abilities that specify a range, including rituals, and the unit can reroll hazardous abilities from psychic. The extra range on rituals is pretty cute, although honestly many lists these days are running at least 2 vortex beasts, so you're doubling the range on your rituals regardless. Empiric Onslaught is a 25-point enhancement that gives +3 attacks to the bearer's psychic weapons when you're in the flow. This one I think is actually pretty interesting because you can take some of the low volume psychic attacks and really amp them up, so if you use this strategically, I think it's pretty spicy. And lastly, we have the Noctilith Mantle, the cheapest enhancement because it's 15 points, grants the bearer's unit the ability to always be in flow, but they cannot use rituals. I think this one's pretty interesting. Losing the flexibility for ritual does hurt. However, the ability to always get +1 to wound for your psychic attacks, I think worth taking a look at for a specific unit. That's the enhancements. Overall, I think they are going to kind of struggle against some of the indexed enhancements, but let's take a look at the stratagems. First off, we've got Warding Hex. This is a 1 CP stratagem that allows you to sticky an objective in your command phase. This means that as long as you control it now, you will continue to hold it even if you leave it until your opponent actually flips it over to their control. It's a great utility strat, I'm here for it. Wrath of the Doomed is a 1 CP stratagem that allows a unit to fight on death in melee on a 4+ or on a 3+ when in flow. Very classic fight on death mechanic. Thousand Suns are not really known for their melee capabilities, although I think there are some incentives to include Terminators here, which we haven't been seeing very often. Strands of Time is a 1 CP stratagem that allows a unit to shoot or charge when falling back, or if you're in flow, you get both. Another great flexible unit. One thing that Thousand Suns do suffer from is the fact that if you tag them up, they are going to have limited shooting capabilities, in particular on things like those very nasty Infernal Masters that can't shoot in combat the way that Magnus can. Through the Veil is a 1 CP stratagem. This allows you to select a Rubric Marine or a Terminator unit in reserve, and you can give them the Deep Strike ability. This of course allows your Rubrics to Deep Strike. Your Terminators, which already have Deep Strike, instead gain a 6-inch Deep Strike when you're in flow, but may not charge afterwards. Scouring Warp Flame is a 1 CP ability that grants a psychic unit that's in flow the ability to ignore cover and allow them to strip cover from one of the units that they shot at for the phase. Finally, we have Kaleidoscopic Tempest, a 1 CP stratagem. Psychic unit gains stealth when shot at, and if they're in flow, they also gain the benefit of cover. I think it's not bad, it's nice to have a little defensive ability. Overall, this detachment is strange, largely because of the fact that when you take it at face value, it looks strong. Rerolling wound rolls for 1s of psychic attacks, plus 1 to wound when you're in the flow sounds fantastic. It's just hard to really compete with what they currently have. The devastating wounds alone isn't necessarily enough to say, okay, I'm not going to take this detachment, but the things that you lose in the enhancements does hurt a lot, considering many of these are just kind of weaker versions of things we already have. And as far as the stratagems go, we are going to lose a couple key ones, including the ability to shoot indirectly, as well as granting a unit full hit and wound rerolls with a psychic attack. I am excited to try it and see how it goes on the battlefield. Let me know what you think of this detachment. With that, I'll see y'all tomorrow for the next one.